I bet you've never had to call the sheriff on a homeowners association. Well, buckle up, because by the end of this story, you might want to check your own property lines just in case. See, I always thought the worst part about inheriting land would be the taxes, or maybe finding raccoons living in the attic. Turns out the real predators wear business suits and hand out newsletters. My name's Lucas Kane, and 5 years ago my world changed with a phone call from a lawyer and a single yellowed envelope. My grandfather had left me his cabin, 150 acres of rugged Rocky Mountain wilderness, complete with a rickety old hunting shack that smelled like cedar smoke and everything I missed about being a kid. It was nothing special to look at unless you like crooked chimneys, leaky roofs, and a porch that creaked louder than your knees after a 12-hour shift. But to me it was perfect. Out there's a kind of silence you can't find anywhere else. The cabin sat at the end of a dirt road so rough it would rattle your fillings out, perched above a glassy little pond that caught every sunrise. My closest neighbor was a family of deer and the occasional black bear poking around my trash cans. The air smelled cleaner. The world felt honest. I'd spend weekends fixing up the old place, not to turn it into some HGTV special, but to keep my grandfather's spirit alive. Every nail I hammered was like a handshake with the past. I'd sit out on that porch with a glass of bourbon watching the sun sink behind the peaks, and for a while it felt like peace wasn't just something other people talked about. Now, if you've never dealt with an HOA, consider yourself blessed. My land was grandfathered in borders set long before the words planned community meant anything up here. I'd heard about Sierra Heights, this fancy gated development down the hill, all their artificial lakes and perfectly trimmed lawns, the kind of place where people drive golf carts to check their mail. It all seemed a million miles away, until the day a woman in heels and an expensive jacket showed up at my tree line holding a clipboard like it was a weapon. She didn't say a word, just stared at my cabin, snapped a few photos, and melted back into the woods. I shrugged it off, figured maybe she was a lost realtor or a hiker with weird taste in footwear. But there was something about the way she looked at my land, like she was measuring it for drapes. A week later, after a hellish string of all-nighters in the city, I drove up to the cabin, desperate for some quiet. Instead, I found an envelope stuck under a rock on my porch. Not the usual pizza flyers or county tax junk. This one had a fancy seal and smelled faintly of perfume and printer ink. Sierra Heights Homeowners Association was stamped across the top in big gold letters. I wasn't sure whether to laugh or be offended. The letter read, "No kidding. Dear Mr. Kane, your property has been identified as part of the Sierra Heights managed area. Please provide access keys for maintenance and inspections." I nearly spit out my coffee. My land. Their managed area. I'd seen bureaucracy, but this was Olympic level. I figured it had to be a clerical screw-up. Maybe somebody misread a map. Maybe they just sent a letter to every property owner within 5 miles. I tossed the letter on the table, poured myself a drink, and tried to forget about it. But you know how trouble never shows up alone. The following weekend, there's another letter, this one taped to my door, screaming "Final Notice" in red ink. According to them, I had 72 hours to comply with HOA regulations or face fines of $500 a day for non-compliance. Oh, and enforcement measures. Whatever the hell that meant. I'll admit I started to sweat a little. I checked the deed still mine. I pulled up county records, no changes, no annexation, nothing, just me and my legal right to peace and quiet. But the HOA, they weren't backing off. I called the number on the letter. After 10 minutes of hold music, Rachel Bloom herself picked up, president of Sierra Heights HOA, probably CEO of making people miserable too. Her voice was all honey and razors. "Mr. Kane, according to our maps, your property is a designated community recreation area now. It's standard practice. Boundaries are fluid, you understand? It'll be easier if you cooperate." Fluid boundaries. Maybe on a watercolor, not with land. I told her in no uncertain terms to keep her people off my property or I'd call the sheriff. She went quiet for a beat, then dropped the nice act. "That's unfortunate, Mr. Kane. We do have other options." That night I couldn't shake the feeling I was being watched. Sure enough, by morning there was a new sign planted down by my driveway: HOA members only, common recreational area, and I'll be damned if it wasn't right on my property. See, this is where the gloves came off. I called an old friend, Laura Matthews, a real estate attorney with a reputation for making developers cry. She took one look at my paperwork and started cursing. According to her, this wasn't just a paperwork error. The HOA had filed for a boundary adjustment with the county, trying to claim my land as open space. Not legal, but they were acting like it was already done. Worse, they'd started advertising my cabin on their website as the future community lodge, my actual real-life home up for grabs like a prize on The Price is Right. Laura dug in, filed an injunction, pulled every record, told me to document everything. Signs started popping up faster than I could rip them down. Members-only trail. Future picnic pavilion. Community fire pit. One morning I drove up and found a metal gate chained across my driveway, guarded by some bored rent-a-cop chewing gum and pretending he owned the place. I called the sheriff. Deputy Rodriguez showed up, took one look at the chain and said, "That's bold. You got paperwork." I handed him everything Laura had prepped: deeds, maps, affidavits. He nodded, cut the chain with bolt cutters, and told me to keep my lawyer on speed dial. But the HOA wasn't done. That afternoon I found the shed had been busted open, tools gone, padlock smashed, muddy boot prints everywhere. They were sending a message. If intimidation didn't work, they'd just try to wear me down. One morning, after another night spent dozing on the porch with a shotgun for company, I woke to find bright orange survey flags running all over my land, marking some imaginary boundary. Down by the pond, they'd set up stakes for a future boating dock, my pond, my family's land being carved up on paper. I called Laura, nearly choking on my anger. She said, "They're trying to create a record, Lucas. Make it look like their use is established. Film everything. This is about narrative, not facts." Then came the escalation, a squad of HOA volunteers in matching vests marching up my driveway with clipboards and GPS units. I walked out to meet them, camera rolling. "You're trespassing," I said, voice shaking with rage. The guy in front looked at his clipboard deadpan. "Sir, we're just performing a compliance survey. Standard procedure for shared use zones. You ever want to punch a phrase, standard procedure?" I told them to get off my land or the sheriff would come back, and this time he'd bring friends. They left. But the message was clear. They weren't bluffing. They were going to keep coming until I caved. Laura kept at it, pushing for an emergency hearing. Just when things seemed darkest, she got a call. A former HOA board member wanted to talk, said he'd testify. We met him at a diner in town, the guy trembling like he expected Rachel to materialize in the parking lot. He told us Rachel Bloom had been scheming to get my land for years. She'd faked survey maps, sold the idea to residents, even promised her developer buddies a new lodge. He had emails, meeting notes, the whole dirty trail. Armed with his testimony and a mountain of evidence, we went to court. The courtroom felt colder than the mountain air. Rachel showed up in her Sunday best, her lawyer strutting like he owned the place. Laura laid it all out: deeds, maps, photos of signs and fences, surveillance footage of HOA members vandalizing my property. Then the real bombshell: Doug's testimony, complete with emails. Rachel's lawyer stammered about long-standing understandings and community benefit. I almost laughed. When I took the stand, I made it simple. This land isn't theirs to share. My grandfather didn't survive the Depression, 2 wars and 3 generations of politicians, so some HOA could turn it into a picnic spot. The judge didn't need long. "It is abundantly clear that the property belongs to Mr. Lucas Kane," he said. "Sierra Heights HOA, engaged in harassment, trespassing, vandalism, and fraudulent misrepresentation. Permanent injunction, $750,000 in damages." His gavel dropped like thunder. He even recommended the district attorney pursue criminal charges against Rachel for fraud. Let me tell you, karma isn't always poetic, but sometimes it shows up in a black robe and hands you the keys to your own front door. The news hit the local stations that evening. Rachel Bloom, former HOA Queen Bee, facing fraud charges, her mugshot on TV looking like she'd just tasted bad milk. The county sent a crew to rip up every sign and gate. For the first time in months, my land was mine again. No trespassers, no threats, no fake members, only picnic spots. We threw a party. Laura, Doug, a few friends grilling burgers and laughing around a bonfire, Doug poking at the flames and shaking his head. "Never thought I'd see Rachel Bloom eat crow," he said, chuckling. "Half the community wants her gone now." Laura grinned, raising her glass to stubborn men in their mountains. Later, alone under the stars, I walked the trails, breathing in the silence. The scars were there, paint faded but not gone, memories of the fight hanging in the air. But peace. Yeah, it had finally come home. Here's what I realize: sometimes you don't recognize what you're willing to fight for until someone tries to take it. It's not just about land or cabins or legal boundaries. It's about the line you draw, the one that says, This far no farther. My grandfather's cabin taught me that. Some things you protect not because they're perfect, but because they're yours. Before heading in, I put up a new sign, private property. Welcome, friends. No threats, no warnings. Just a simple truth. So justice was served, Rachel got her day in court, and the mountain got its peace back. But you gotta wonder, where's the line between protecting a community and becoming a bully and a blazer? When does common good become just another way to steal what isn't yours? What do you think? Where should we draw the line? Ever had your own run-in with an HOA or fought for something you thought you'd already won? Drop your thoughts and stories in the comments. I'd love to hear what justice means to you.